звідси пішли.
Добрий день, я вітаю.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga Atamanova and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. Today I want to introduce our speaker is Denis Marchuk, Deputy Chair of the Ukrainian Agrarian Council. Good afternoon, Mr. Denis. And now we will be talking about the spring sowing campaign, which is coming shortly. What are the challenges, what are the plans, what are your forecasts? Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank our armed forces of Ukraine for the opportunity not only to talk but also to be able to prepare to the sowing campaign. But apart from the war factor, there is a number of matters that arise with the manufacturers of agricultural products, and main thing is funding, raising of funding for sowing campaign. What are the complications? The complications are because during 2022 there was the support by preferential lending within the framework of 579 program. About 95 billion hryvnias were allocated that were used by the agrarians. More than 45,000 businesses were able to lend on the preferential conditions, but in March 23 it already stopped its operation. And before the sowing campaign, the agrarians, they face the challenge when they get called by the banks, which ask them to get their loans repaid, and in view of the fact that don't have funds, because the agrarians, even regardless of the export corridors, they were not able to sell their products at market prices. They were either working in zero or with loss. So the loans was the only thing that they could have relied on, and they keep relying on. So now the key issue is the continuation of 579 program, so that the agrarians could find. We need about 40 billion hryvnias for sowing campaign, so they could get that money. There are signals of about the continuation of this program, but we cannot extend this, we cannot delay this process, because the southern regions are already in the fields, and within a week or two the weather conditions will become favorable for all the agrarians to get involved in their work. And the absence of funding means that the agrarians will not be able to procure all the necessary components for their normal operation. I'm talking about the mineral fertilizers, the means for protection of the plants, the fuel, and the campaign will not be possible within the full extent, within 100%, without all those factors. The ability to cover their needs in the agrarian sector is about 30% in terms of fertilizers, and our sowing areas reduced to 7 million hectares of land due to the war. Is like 24-25% of all the workable lands in Ukraine, and that will in case the agrarians will not be able to get engaged to the full extent, it will result in the fall of the production 24-25%. And obviously in year 23 we will not have a normal harvest potential, so it's very important to find the funding for lending to expand the funding for single business. Previously, within that program, they could be lent up to 90 million hryvnia, and in view of the inflation, that sum should have been expanded to 180 million, which is not so much of an amount. Well, it's about the sowing campaign in all of the Ukraine, but regarding the deoccupied areas, apart from funding, there is also a number of matters arising in terms of their operation. One of the factors is the mining, and mining of the fields of the lands is very dense. There are more than 5 million hectares of land which are contaminated with mines, which is another complication during the beginning of the sowing campaign. So we will not see some of the parts of those lands being soon in Kherson and Mykolaiv region, because number one priority there is the demining first of all, and moving along the course of opportunities we have now in terms of the brigades, the teams that do the demining. Only 30% of the fields can be sown in case they are demined. And another factor is that the sowing campaign will be postponed in the deoccupied territories, because in fact when in March we will have to sow the first crops, they will not be able to do it. So we only hope that they would be able to sow them later. And again, the works, the recognition of the works during the period that territory was occupied, it brings up more issues about the collaboration, and the Article 311 recognizes the presence of any business in the occupied territory as the collaboration it can be accepted very difficult, because the agrarians who were maintaining jobs, were keeping jobs, were letting people keep their jobs and feed their families. They may face this article regarding the collaborationism, and I hope that the 7645 and 7547 draft laws will be adopted by the Cabinet of Ministers that will relieve them of those responsibilities, and it will give an additional stimulus to the agrarians, which will let them understand that they are being supported and they can work easily on their lands after the occupation. So those factors, I mean the demining, financial factor, and this legal factor, like not recognition of the agrarians as those who supported the operation of the business in the occupied territories, is something that is still of great concern to the agrarians. Okay, I have a lot of questions, but let's start with this. Do we understand that Mykolaiv and Kherson region are not catching up with the sowing campaign due to the dense mining? Well, in Mykolaiv region there is an intense program for demining upon the request of our military and state emergency service, so the prospects for demining of Mykolaiv region are a bit brighter than for the Kherson region, because there are additional forces engaged in demining, but again it's like about 300,000 hectares which are still mined, and the local administration say like let's demine at least 3,500 hectares to grow the vegetables there. But again, compare 3,500 to 300,000 hectares, and the most densely mined region is around Snihurivka, and the agrarians work there at their own risk with their employees. They put the signals where they know that the area is contaminated. They call to state emergency service to get them involved in demining. So it's very difficult procedure. It's very long. So we have to work with the international partners to procure the necessary equipment which will help to preserve human lives. And also there is the FAO international campaign working under United Nations in Kharkiv region, and we hope there will be more intense work in terms of demining there. But to summarize it all, under the conditions in these circumstances we end up in, it will be a long story and it may take years. What's the situation in Sumy and Chernihiv region in this regard? Well, due to the fact that they were deoccupied earlier, there was a goodwill gesture thanks to the armed forces of Ukraine. Within this period, we've managed to get prepared better to the sowing campaign in those regions, so those fields that were contaminated there, they were cleared. And another component is the regions of Chernihiv and Sumy region, which are still under shell, and those along the border. For example, today there already were 2 air raid alerts, and Sumy region keeps getting affected by them, so the sowing campaign is still difficult there. As to the government support of our agrarians, what is the phase of those negotiations? Was the level of communication with the government? On the 3rd of March there was the official address by the leading agricultural organizations to the Minister of Finance, to the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, to consider the proposal for extension of the preferential lending program, and there was a meeting in the Ministry of Agricultural Policy. They're not responsible for the allocation of costs, but back on Friday there was a signal that the extension of the program would be accepted during the meeting of the Cabinet of Ministers, so we hope that the extension of the program will be confirmed soon. Thank you, dear colleagues. If you have any questions, please go ahead. Anastasia Kravchenko, Ukrinform. My question is as follows. We know that this year the harvest will be smaller. We keep seeing the programs with logistics, the problems with the grain corridor. Do you think that it will influence that on the fact that Ukraine may lose its export markets? Our constant buyers will start buying grain from other countries. Well, the position of Russia, who creates problems for us, is aimed at breaking those logistics for those export markets that are traditionally Ukrainian, so they want to conquer those markets. But due to the good quality of our products, we export it to the significant markets of Europe, Asia and Africa. So the suspension of the grain deal will not result in the world finding a replacement for Ukrainian products. So this is why there is such an international pressure to have the grain deal operating. So the big ports of Odessa, and now we're already talking about Mykolaiv, that this export is being continued, and Ukraine can continue fulfilling its potential to provide the world with the grain. And arrival of the UN chairman is the confirmation of it. The grain deal, will it continue working, and will Mykolaiv be engaged in this deal? Well, the key issue for the agrarians and for the economy sector, thanks to the export potential, we were able to make $23 billion on export of agricultural products. And in these circumstances, I mean, the fall of economy and the continuation of war, export is the top priority issue, and respectively grain deal 2, export by land is not an alternative to the sea. And today, when we're talking as the state of Ukraine, we communicate with Turkey and United Nations. They keep reassuring us that the grain deal will be continued. I mean, the recent arrival of the chairman of United Nations and the statement of the Minister of Agriculture and Ministry of Armed Forces of Turkey, who recognized 95% that the grain deal will be continued. The only question is under what conditions, and Ukraine wanted to expand this grain deal by opening a port of Mykolaiv. To add in port of Mykolaiv, we were discussing the time criteria, so it is 1 year and not 120 days. And we were talking about the range of products that could be moved. There is a negotiation about this in Europe. The representatives of UN and Russia meet in Geneva today. Tomorrow there will be a meeting of representatives of Ukraine and United Nations. So we will find out about the results of those negotiations quite shortly. So I think that we will have another 120 days, and maybe with no inclusion of Mykolaiv port to the grain deal. So let's wait for the news. Thank you for this information. Denis Information, Deputy Chairman of the Ukrainian Agrarian Council. Dear colleagues, our next briefing is at 1500. We will be talking to Vitaly Kim about the situation in Mykolaiv region. So bear with us, trust in the armed forces, and glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.